I'm sitting here in my kitchen in Memphis, Tennessee, staring at the coffee cup Walter never got to finish yesterday morning. The sun's coming through the same yellow curtains we hung together 37 years ago, and I keep expecting to hear his footsteps on the stairs. But there won't be any more footsteps. My husband died yesterday at 4:47 in the afternoon, and I can't stop replaying his last words in my mind. We knew it was coming. Stage 4, pancreatic cancer doesn't leave much room for miracles, the doctors said. But knowing something and living through it are two entirely different things. For 6 months, I watched the man I loved, the man who used to carry me over puddles just to make me laugh, who taught our 3 children how to ride bikes and face their fears. I watched him shrink into someone I barely recognized. The hospice nurse, a kind woman named Patricia, told me last week that it would be soon. "His body's shutting down, Mrs. Morrison," she said, squeezing my hand. "Make sure you say everything you need to say. But here's the thing about dying. It doesn't wait for you to be ready. It doesn't care if you've rehearsed your goodbye speech, or if you still have 1,000 questions. Yesterday morning started like all the others had for the past month. I woke up in the chair next to his hospital bed, the one we'd set up in our living room because Walter wanted to die at home, looking at his garden through the window. I made myself some coffee, checked his breathing, adjusted his pillows. He hadn't spoken in 3 days. The morphine kept him comfortable, kept him floating somewhere between here and wherever we go next. Around noon, our daughter Jessica came by with the grandkids. She didn't bring them into the room. They're only 6 and 8, too young to see their papa like this. But I could hear them playing in the backyard, their laughter drifting through the open window. Walter's eyes were closed, but I saw his lips twitch into something almost like a smile. He always loved hearing those children play. Jessica left around 2. She kissed her father's forehead, whispered something I couldn't hear, and then held me for a long time in the hallway. "Call me if anything changes," she said, but we both knew what she really meant. "Call me when it happens." I nodded, patted her cheek the way I used to when she was little, and watched her drive away. The afternoon dragged on. I sat beside Walter, holding his hand, those strong hands that had fixed everything that ever broke in our house, that had held me through 2 miscarriages and my mother's funeral, that had built a treehouse and changed 1,000 diapers. They were so thin now, the bones too prominent, the skin papery and cool. I talked to him the way I'd been doing for days, telling him about the weather, about what I'd watched on television, about how Mrs. Chen from next door brought over more food than I could ever eat. I told him it was okay to go, that we'd all be all right, even though I wasn't sure that was true. Around 4:30, something changed. I felt it before I saw it. His breathing, which had been so shallow and irregular, suddenly deepened. His eyes opened, really opened, clear and focused in a way they hadn't been in days. He looked directly at me, and for a moment, it was like he'd come back from wherever he'd been. "Walter?" I leaned forward, my heart hammering. "Baby, I'm here." His lips moved. I had to put my ear right next to his mouth to hear him. His voice was barely a whisper, rough as sandpaper, but the words were clear. What he said wasn't, "I love you," though I know he did. It wasn't, "Take care of yourself," or "Tell the kids goodbye." He said, "The box, in the attic, 3rd shelf, you need to know." I pulled back, staring at him. "What box? Walter, what are you talking about?" But his eyes were already starting to close again. He squeezed my hand, weakly, but definitely, and whispered one more thing. "I'm sorry. I should have told you." And then he was gone. Not immediately. He took maybe a dozen more breaths, each one farther apart than the last, while I sat there frozen, torn between calling him back and letting him go peacefully. At 4:47, he exhaled one final time and didn't inhale again. Just like that. 42 years of marriage ended with an apology and a mystery. I called Jessica. I called the hospice nurse. I sat with Walter's body for an hour, holding his hand and crying and feeling completely numb all at once. Patricia came and made the official pronouncement. She was professional and kind, walking me through what would happen next. The funeral home, the death certificate, all the practical things you have to deal with even when your world has just ended. Jessica arrived with her brothers, Marcus and David. We all stood around Walter's body, crying and remembering and trying to believe this was real. But through all of it, through every tear and every hug and every, "I'm so sorry for your loss," I kept hearing those words. The box. In the attic. Third shelf. You need to know. I'm sorry. I should have told you. What box? In 42 years of marriage, Walter and I didn't keep secrets. We had our private thoughts, sure. Everybody does. But secrets? Real secrets? No. We'd been through too much together. We'd survived poverty and racism, job losses and sick children. My bout with breast cancer 10 years ago, and his mother's slow decline into dementia. We'd built a life together, brick by brick, truth by truth. Or so I thought. The funeral home took Walter's body around 8 o'clock last night. After everyone left, I sat in the empty living room, looking at the hospital bed where my husband had just died. And I felt something I hadn't expected to feel. Anger. How dare he leave me with a mystery? How dare he die with an apology on his lips and no explanation? For 6 months, I'd taken care of him every single day, had changed his sheets and helped him to the bathroom and held him when the pain got too bad. I'd said goodbye to him 1,000 different ways. And he'd saved one more secret for his last words. I didn't sleep last night. I lay in our bed, though it's just mine now, and stared at the ceiling. The ceiling I'd stared at while pregnant with Jessica, wondering if we'd be good parents. The ceiling I'd stared at after my mastectomy, wondering if Walter would still love me with my reconstructed body. The ceiling I'd stared at on so many ordinary nights, listening to Walter snore beside me, never imagining there would come a night when that sound would be gone forever. Around 3 in the morning, I got up. I stood at the bottom of the attic stairs for a long time, my hand on the railing, my heart pounding. Did I want to know? Whatever was in that box, Walter had kept it from me for our entire marriage. Maybe some secrets should stay buried. Maybe I should just let it go. Preserve the memory of the man I loved without tarnishing it with whatever truth he'd hidden. But I'm 61 years old, and I've never been one to hide from hard truths. I've lived through Jim Crow and the civil rights movement, through losing my father when I was 12, and raising 3 black children in America. I've survived breast cancer and buried both my parents and most of my siblings. I've earned the right to know my own life, all of it, even the parts that might hurt. So I climbed those stairs. The attic was dusty and hot, crammed with decades of accumulated life, Christmas decorations and old tax returns, the kids' school projects and boxes of photographs. I found the 3rd shelf, right where Walter said. And there, behind a stack of winter coats, was a cardboard box I'd never seen before. It wasn't dusty, like everything else up there. Someone had been opening it, touching it, keeping it accessible. I brought it downstairs and set it on the kitchen table, this same table where I'm sitting now. My hands were shaking. I made myself another cup of coffee, even though it was 3 in the morning and I was already wide awake. Then I opened the box. Inside were letters, dozens of them, maybe 100, all addressed to Walter at a P.O. box I didn't know he had. They were dated over the course of 40 years, the earliest ones from 1985, just 3 years after we got married. The return address was in California. The name on them was Sarah Mitchell. I recognized that name. Sarah was Walter's high school girlfriend, the one he dated before he met me. He'd told me about her years ago, how they'd been together for 2 years, how they'd broken up when he moved to Tennessee for college. It was ancient history, or so I thought. But here were letters spanning 4 decades, letters he'd kept hidden from me in our attic. My first instinct was not to read them. They weren't addressed to me. But Walter's dying words kept echoing in my head. You need to know. So I started reading, and now I'm sitting here at dawn, the day after my husband died, with my entire life rewritten in my mind. Sarah didn't just write to Walter. He wrote back. For 40 years, they maintained a correspondence, sharing their lives with each other while living completely separate existences. She got married too, had children too, lived a whole life out in Oakland. And from what I can piece together from these letters, she was going through almost exactly what I was going through. The same struggles, the same joys, the same ordinary life. She and Walter wrote to each other about their kids' soccer games and their mortgage payments and their aging parents. They wrote about books they'd read and movies they'd seen. They wrote like old friends, comfortable and familiar. But they also wrote like something more. Not lovers. I need to be clear about that. There was nothing sexual or romantic in these letters. Nothing that suggested they ever saw each other after high school or wanted to. But there was an intimacy there that makes my chest ache. They knew each other in a way that felt parallel to how Walter and I knew each other. Like he'd been living 2 lives. One with me in the physical world, and one with her on paper. In one letter from 1993, Walter wrote about how proud he was that Marcus made the basketball team. In another from the same month, he wrote to Sarah about the same thing, but differently, more philosophically, talking about what it meant to watch your child discover their strengths. He told her things about his inner life that I'm not sure he ever told me. Did he not think I'd understand? Did he need someone else to really see him? Sarah wrote about her marriage troubles. Her husband drank too much, was rough with the kids sometimes. Walter wrote back with advice, with compassion. In 2003, she wrote that she was leaving her husband, taking her kids, and starting over. Walter's response was full of encouragement and pride. I never knew any of this was happening. While I was folding Walter's laundry and making his dinner, he was emotionally supporting another woman through a divorce. Does that make him unfaithful? I keep asking myself this question. He never touched her. He never lied about where he was or who he was with. But he had this whole secret emotional world that excluded me completely. Is that betrayal? Or is it just being human? Having different parts of yourself that you share with different people? The last letter was from Sarah, dated 6 months ago, right when Walter got his diagnosis. She wrote about her own health problems, about getting older, about being grateful for their friendship all these years. She said, I hope your wife knows how lucky she is. I hope you've built the life with her that you always dreamed about. Walter never responded to that letter. I guess he couldn't by then. Or maybe he realized finally that he needed to tell me the truth before he died. Maybe that's why his last words were an apology. I should be furious. I should feel betrayed. And maybe I do, somewhere underneath the exhaustion and grief. But mostly what I feel is confused. Because the Walter I knew, the man who rubbed my feet while we watched TV, who called me from work just to say he was thinking about me, who held my hand through every doctor's appointment and every scary moment, That man was real. He loved me. I never doubted that for a second, and I don't doubt it now. But apparently, he also needed something I couldn't give him. Some part of himself could only exist in those letters to a woman I'd barely heard of. And now he's gone. And I can't ask him why. I can't ask him what I lacked, what Sarah had that made him need to write to her for 40 years. I can't ask him if he loved her, or if love is even the right word for whatever this was. The funeral is tomorrow. People will come and tell me how wonderful Walter was, how much they'll miss him, how lucky I was to have him. And I'll nod and thank them, because it's all true. I was lucky. We had a good marriage, a real marriage, with real love and real partnership. But we also had this invisible third party, this ghost woman in California who knew parts of my husband I never knew existed. I found Sarah's phone number in the most recent letter. I've been staring at it for an hour now, wondering if I should call. What would I even say? Hi, I'm Walter's widow, and I just found out you've been his pen pal for our entire marriage. Would she even know that he died? Should I tell her? Does she deserve to know? To grieve? Or should I burn these letters, erase this discovery, let Walter's secret die with him? That's what part of me wants to do. Just pretend I never climbed those attic stairs, never opened that box. Go on remembering my husband the way I always knew him, without this complication. But I can't. Walter's last words were, "You need to know." He wanted me to find this. Maybe not to hurt me, but because… what? Because he thought I deserved the whole truth? Because he couldn't die carrying this secret alone? I don't have answers. I'm just a 61-year-old widow sitting in her kitchen in Memphis, watching the sunrise on the first day of the rest of my life without the man I thought I knew completely. Tomorrow, I'll bury him. Next week, I'll start sorting through his clothes and figuring out how to live alone. Eventually, I'll probably forgive him for this, whatever this is. But right now, in this moment, all I can think is, how many people really know each other, even after 42 years? How many secret boxes are hidden in how many attics? And was my marriage real, or just one version of reality, running parallel to another one I never saw? Walter's last words changed everything. But maybe they didn't change anything at all. Maybe they just revealed what was always true, that people are complicated, that love is complicated, that even our longest relationships contain mysteries. Maybe that's not betrayal. Maybe that's just life. I still don't know. Ask me again after the funeral. Ask me again after I decide whether to call Sarah Mitchell. Ask me again after I figure out how to live with this truth and make peace with a man who can't answer for himself anymore. All I know for sure is this. I loved Walter Morrison for 42 years, and he loved me. And somehow, impossibly, that has to be enough.